everyone, I'm Leo and I'm the Senior Executive here at SarcoidosisUK. I hope everyone's well and thank you very much for joining me for this video today. So this month is our Living Well with Sarcoidosis month, and we've been sharing lots of information and resources about how we can look after our physical and mental health as best as possible. Now, if you have a look on our website, you'll see all of the information and resources we've been sharing, and you'll also see some ways that you can get involved and help out with the charity as well. So please do have a look on our website and our social media pages where you can take a look at all of that. Now, as part of our Living Well with Sarcoidosis month, earlier on today, I caught up with Dr Lesley-Anne Kerr, and we filmed a Q&A video about nutrition, where I asked her questions that had been collected from you guys about foods, what foods can we have to kind of help to reduce any extra inflammation in the body. And Dr Kerr shared her knowledge and about this with us. So I will play that video shortly, but just a bit of background on Dr Kerr. Dr Kerr is a nutritional therapist with a background in medical research and also autoimmune conditions. And she talks in the video about following an anti-inflammatory diet and the different ways that one might be able to do this. So you will see when you're watching the video that, for some people it might be quite tough to follow a completely anti-inflammatory diet, and it might be quite a big change for them. So please don't think that you have to follow absolutely everything in this video. It might just be that you take away sort of 1 or 2 tips from the video about how you can reduce your intake of foods that cause extra inflammation in the body. And yeah, I hope it's a useful video for you all. And just before I play our conversation, I want to just kind of remind everyone that you shouldn't make any big changes to your diet without first consulting your specialist, or if not your GP, and getting the go-ahead from them. Okay, thank you very much. I will play the video and I hope you find it useful. Hello, Dr. Kerr, how are you doing?
Hi Leo, it's nice to be here this morning with you. I'm doing great, thanks.
Brilliant. No, it's absolutely fantastic to have you here with us. Nutrition is something that a lot of sarcoidosis patients ask about, particularly about following an anti-inflammatory diet. So it's absolutely fantastic to have you here with us today, talking about this very important topic. Now, we've had lots of questions sent in, but before we start going through those, would you mind telling us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm really happy to do that. So I'm a nutritional therapist, but my background is in medical research. So my PhD, I did a PhD, so I have a doctorate from Guy's and St Thomas's Medical School, and it was on autoimmune disease and the genes involved in autoimmune disease. So I'm a molecular immunologist originally, and actually that's sort of looking at genes and epigenetics, genes that are being used, has been kind of one of the driving forces in me ending up being a nutritional therapist, because what we eat changes which genes are switched on and switched off in our bodies. So choosing to eat healthy foods can make a very big difference to our immune system. And that's how I ended up being a nutritional therapist now.
Brilliant. This is great to hear, and it's obviously extremely qualified to be helping us out for this Q&A today, so thank you very much. Like I said, we've had lots of questions come in. Before we kind of go into them, I did say this in the introduction, but just to reiterate, if you are planning on making any big changes to your diet, please do have a chat with your specialist or your GP if you can't speak to us, if you don't have a specialist, and kind of talk to them about the changes you're planning on making before you do. Yes, and I think we can pretty much get started now. So I think I've kind of grouped the questions into different groups, and the first group I thought we'd talk about is diet, different types of diet and what they entail. One of the aims for a lot of sarcoidosis patients when they change their diet is to try and reduce inflammation in the body. And the advice for sarcoidosis patients tends to be follow an anti-inflammatory diet. So first of all, what exactly is meant by an anti-inflammatory diet?
Okay, that's as long as a piece of string, Leo. An anti-inflammatory diet, if you look on different websites all over the internet, they will give you a different definition of what's included in it. But fundamentally, an anti-inflammatory diet is a diet that reduces inflammation in your body or doesn't cause inflammation in your body. So it's a diet that is soothing your immune system, really, and soothing inflammation in your body. So usually it's looking at getting away from processed foods, ultra processed foods, ready meals, takeaways, and eating real foods, eating a lot of vegetables, some low carb fruits, and sort of a real diet rather than an ultra processed diet.
That's very useful to have that definition. And like you say, there does seem to be lots of different sources of information telling us what an anti-inflammatory diet is. So we've had a couple of questions about different types of anti-inflammatory diets. One of them is the paleo diet. Could you tell us what the paleo diet is?
Okay, so the paleo diet, again, you'll get different definitions on different websites, but it's fundamentally eating how we think Stone Age men, cave women ate. So it's very unprocessed. It has no dairy because we weren't farming animals to get milk from at that time, and it has no grains, so it has no flour. And some paleo diets are very high in offal, in liver and heart and kidney, so kind of offal meats, which we tend really not to eat in Western culture now, but are actually very nutrient dense. So all of the diets we're going to be talking about, I think, are basically talking about cutting out the refined foods, the ultra processed foods. So one way of doing that is paleo. And so paleo would be the caveman diet with lots of vegetables, no dairy, no grain.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dr. Kerr. So let's say we'll go on to talk about more diets in a moment. But let's say somebody decided to start following an anti-inflammatory diet, and they started to notice some of their symptoms improving, or they started to feel a bit better. I know the answer to this question already, but let's ask it just in case anyone isn't sure. Should somebody change their medication if they start to feel improvements as a result of changing their lifestyle?
Not without advice and the support of their health professionals. So it's really important when you're working with people with autoimmune disease that they're keeping their health professionals informed, their GP and consultants, about their dietary changes. And if they're feeling better, then getting the correct tests, blood tests and x-rays or whatever, to see that the changes are real, and changing medication and reducing medication as appropriate with the advice of their health professional.
Absolutely, yes. So a lot of these anti-inflammatory diets are to do with cutting out ultra-processed foods and also sugar. What advice could you give for reducing sugar in the diet?
Okay, so our body sees sugar as sugar. It also sees flour as sugar. So ultra-processed foods with a lot of sugar in them and flour. So flour is very quickly broken down in our digestive system into simple sugars, which spike our blood sugar in our bloodstream and can cause mood changes and inflammation. So high sugar levels are one of the main causes of inflammation in people in the Western world. So the very first thing to do would be to start to limit or omit actual sugar and flour from your diet. And some people find that very hard to do in one go and need to reduce it slowly, and other people just decide they'll clear their cupboards and they won't have sugar and flour in the house.
Absolutely. Yeah, I imagine it might be quite hard for some people to do everything all at once. I think in this country, a lot of our diet is quite processed sometimes, isn't it? So if we had to cut out one thing, the most important thing to cut out first, would you say that is sugar?
Yeah, I would. So sugar's the first thing, and baked goods and things that have flour in them is the second. And people can take their time and reduce them gradually if they're not able to cut them out completely straight away.
Absolutely. And if somebody was going to follow a sort of strict anti-inflammatory diet, is there any space for treats while you're on holiday, or I don't know, cheat days occasionally?
Yeah, there is, definitely. I think if you actually want to heal your gut, your leaky gut, which is one of the main causes of autoimmune disease, and the main cause of leaky gut is ultra processed food, and particularly flour and sugar, you might want to have a few weeks where you really are quite strict about those things. But life is for living, and once you've healed your gut, you'll probably find that having the odd treat, in inverted commas, isn't going to cause a problem for you. And hopefully, actually, as your palate changes, you might not even see them as treats anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great answer. So a number of people actually asked about intermittent fasting. Is that important in an anti-inflammatory diet? And I suppose part two of that question is are there any benefits to intermittent fasting?
Okay, so intermittent fasting is sort of a separate concept to diet or eating plan. I try actually in my practice not to use the word diet very often, because people think of that as like a calorie restricted thing you do for a short period of time to rapidly lose weight. And we now know that's really unhealthy for people to do. And actually I talk about progressing onto a healthier eating plan. And that can be gradual. So intermittent fasting, the research on that is quite new, really. But actually, in many cultures, fasting has been part of life centuries upon centuries. So intermittent fasting is when you restrict the number of hours in the day you eat, and then you have a fasting window, which are the hours where you don't eat. So once you have finished digesting food, which can take up to 3 hours after your last meal, your digestion completely switches off. And for most of us, the only time we get this is during the night. And at that point, your body switches on autophagy, which is the immune system switching on its surveillance and checking through the body for old cells that aren't doing very well, for precancers and things like that. And so it's a cleanup process. So autophagy is the immune system automatically breaking down basically dodgy cells in our body. So there's a whole research body of evidence on intermittent fasting. But basically, for people thinking about beginning with that, the best idea would be to look at something like a 16-hour window between their last calories and their first calories. And doing that allows your body to switch on and repair its immune system and be more healthy.
Yeah, I suppose 16 hours sounds like quite a lot, but if you count the sort of sleeping hours, if you were to sort of eat your last calorie at early dinner time the night before and then sleep, it actually wouldn't be that long the next morning.
It wouldn't. And Leo, you can start with like just 12 hours. So even just thinking about having 12 hours between your last calories in the day and your first calories the next day, and gradually working up to maybe 14 and 16 hours. And it doesn't have to be every day. If you can do that a few days a week, it has huge benefits for our immune system.
Okay, yeah, because that was going to be my next question, is if doing that every day isn't realistic for some people, if you were to just do it a couple of days a week, there would be benefits to that as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So my next question is to do with plant-based diets. So I know if people are moving towards an anti-inflammatory diet, they will naturally start to eat a lot more plants. But somebody's got in touch and asked about whether they should switch to a completely plant-based diet, so veganism essentially. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts on that, Dr. Kerr?
Yeah, it's a really good question to have been brought up for everyone in this audience to know about. Human beings are still basically, in many ways, just cavemen and cavewomen, and we're omnivores. We have evolved eating a lot of plants, lots and lots of plants. So our diet has changed in the way ultra-processed food diets have come around in the last few decades to be very low in plants. But we're not vegans. We were never vegans. And it's actually very difficult to get all the nutrients you need from a completely plant-based vegan diet. And I often see patients who've been vegan for a few months and they have a lot of dietary deficiencies. So should we eat plant-based? We should eat a lot of plants. So, you know, if we think of us as going back to the paleo concept and cave people, most of our food was vegetables. So we ate a load of leaves and shoots and roots and fruits and berries when we could get hold of them, but we also ate animals. And a lot of the nutrients we need, we can't get from plants. So I suggest to people, if they're not doing kind of big autoimmune disease, fixed diet, which is very strict for the first few weeks, just in general terms, I try to say to people, eat lots and lots, particularly above ground vegetables, so leafy greens, and some fruit, and I think we might be touching on fruit later because some fruits are very sweet and spike our blood sugar, but berries in particular, and then some animal protein because that's where we get some of the nutrients we need. So eating more plant-based is good for us and good for the planet, but being a vegan involves basically weighing and measuring everything and taking supplements to get enough nutrition into your diet. And I wouldn't recommend it without support.
Right, okay. So if somebody really wanted to do it, your advice would be to speak to a nutritionist.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, just to make sure they're getting everything they need in their diet.
Yeah.
Okay. How about organic produce? Somebody's been in touch saying, what are the benefits for a patient with an autoimmune condition or a chronic condition of following an organic diet?
Okay, again, good question. It depends what organic food you eat. So eating organic is going to decrease your toxic load of things like pesticides and herbicides and chemicals on crops. So, you know, 100 years or so ago, everyone ate organic because we weren't putting all the chemicals on our crops. So following an organic diet in terms of the fruit and vegetables you eat will lower your toxic load of chemicals going into your body, which can be very important in autoimmune disease. And for people that can't afford organic vegetables, and these days people are struggling to afford food at all in this current climate. So organic vegetables are extremely expensive unless you're growing your own. So just make sure you wash your vegetables and fruit really well to try and get as much of the pesticide and chemical load off them before you eat them. But just to say, organic doesn't mean healthy. So an organic chocolate cake full of sugar and organic sugar flour is going to be pretty much as unhealthy for you as any other chocolate cake. So you have to be aware of organic means with less chemicals and more pure, but you need to look at the food groups you're looking at and whether they should be included in your autoimmune fixed diet.
Absolutely, yes. And I think that's a good point as well about the cost of organic produce as well. It is a lot more expensive, so it's really useful that if you can't necessarily afford everything organic, I know I couldn't, it's then important to make sure you're washing all the food you buy. Okay. I think finally in the area of diet or changing eating habits, we kind of touched on it earlier about the amount of information there is out there, and sometimes misinformation as well. So if, let's say, somebody's researching how they can start to follow an anti-inflammatory diet, maybe by watching this video might be the first step. If they can then go on to do their research, maybe online, how can they know that the resources they're looking at are reliable and trustworthy?
Oh, that's a really difficult question. There is so much information, good information out there, and there is so much misinformation as well. I would recommend that people looking to change their diet and eat a healthier meal plan with less processed foods in it, stick to stuff written by doctors. So I've got a couple of books here, actually, Leo, that I was going to show you. So I've never written a book, so other than my PhD thesis. So this book, The Clever Guts Diet, by Dr. Michael Mosley, is a very good start. It's very sort of user-friendly. It's written really for the public. It's a bit of a pop textbook. But it starts to explain microbiome and how you get leaky gut and how you can change it by what you eat. So that's one book I would recommend. And the other one probably is, this is written by a doctor at Imperial College, Sarah Hamid. And it's actually a weight loss program. But if you follow her guidelines and just eat bigger portions to maintain weight, it's very sound on what foods to eat and what foods not to eat, and how to start having a cleaner, healthier eating plan.
Yeah, no, that's really useful. That's great. And the advice as well, I think, is useful of kind of, if you're going to start following a diet, to look at information written by a doctor. That's great. So kind of moving away from sort of specific kinds of diets for a moment. Quite a lot of people actually have been in touch asking about medication, and specifically steroids. So we hear from a lot of people who've put on weight while they're on their steroids. Is it advised to diet or change one's eating habits whilst taking steroids?
The simple answer to that is yes. It's advisable to transition onto a healthier, high fiber, lots of plants, a bit of good quality animal protein diet. So a lot of people on steroids have blood sugar imbalance and tend to put on weight. So cutting out, it's cutting out ultra-processed foods, cutting out sugar, cutting out flour, and transitioning to a healthier way of eating. I think that's really the message I want to get over today, that people shouldn't be going on a diet for a month to drop some weight and then going back to really unhealthy eating habits that they might have had before. This is about gradually, or if you want to, quickly transitioning onto a healthy eating plan that has lots and lots of vegetables, some of the low sugar fruits, and is very low in flour and sugar, or hopefully flour and sugar are being omitted. And that would be really helpful for people on steroids, because it would balance their blood sugar and they wouldn't get the cravings for sugary sweet things that are caused by being on the blood sugar roller coaster of eating ultra processed foods.
Yeah, no, that's a really useful answer. Thank you, Dr. Kerr. So I suppose in a nutshell, the answer is it's okay to switch to a more anti-inflammatory way of eating whilst on steroids. That's absolutely fine, but you don't want to kind of do one of those crash diets where the aim is to lose as much weight as quickly as possible. It's more about just making healthier choices that will help to reduce inflammation. Okay, some people got in touch with questions about symptoms. So one symptom that a lot of sarcoidosis patients struggle with is fatigue. what foods can be used or avoided to help manage fatigue? I have a feeling it's going to be a similar answer to one we had before, but I think it's important for us to talk about.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, it's the same answer as before. A lot of people struggling with fatigue through autoimmune disease, again, have unbalanced blood sugar. So they're having blood sugar spikes and troughs, spikes and troughs through the day. And when our blood sugar is low, we feel exhausted, and our mood can be low. It can be hard to concentrate. And at that point, a lot of people who haven't got a lot of information about healthy eating will eat something high carb. They'll eat a donut and have a can of Coke, or they'll have a hot chocolate and a piece of chocolate cake, or they'll eat a Mars bar and have a Lucozade. So there's ultra processed high sugar foods will take you from the blood sugar low and spike your blood sugar high. So you'll feel pretty good for a while, but then because having high blood sugar is bad for us, our brain sends a message to our pancreas to make insulin and take the sugar out of our bloodstream and store it. Mm-hmm. And so we have a sugar crash again. And so a lot of people are up and down all day long with the levels of sugar in their blood. So again, coming back to healthy eating, lots of vegetables, some of the low carb fruits, and some good quality meat, fish and poultry is going to help balance blood sugar and fight fatigue.
Thank you very much. Another person's written in, so we know sarcoidosis is an autoimmune dysfunction, and they're a sarcoidosis patient, but they said they also have other autoimmune conditions as well as their sarcoidosis. Would you be giving the same advice to people who had a number of autoimmune conditions?
Yeah, I mean, autoimmunity, we now believe and understand, begins in the gut. So it's quite common for patients with one autoimmune condition to have other conditions as well. Following an anti-inflammatory, healthy diet, high in fiber, and eating a rainbow as well. So I don't know if people have seen it on the internet. There's been a thing going around about trying to eat 30 different plants a day or a week. And that can include herbs, spices, vegetables, fruit. So the more varied and rainbow our diet is, the better the anti-inflammatory properties of that diet are. So I would really recommend people, if they are suffering from fatigue with their autoimmune disease, that's very common, and I would really say to them, don't try and boost your energy with energy drinks, you know, Monster or Red Bull or Pepsi Max, or, you know, all of those things that have caffeine and loads of sugar in them, and to just stick to a healthy, predominantly plant-based with some animal protein diet.
Okay, Dr. Kerr, we've been through most of our questions now, and kind of to bring this towards the end, what are the main things you would like people to take away from today's discussion?
I think the main things I would like people to take away are to know that ultra-processed foods really are bad for our health, physical and mental. They cause inflammation in our body and our brain. So cutting down on ultra-processed foods, baked goods and sugar is really important for our health, and eating a varied, primarily plant-based diet, so loads of vegetables. And in my practice, I say to stick mainly to berries and maybe green apples as fruit, because a lot of fruit now, tropical fruits, spike our blood sugar and cause the problems we were discussing earlier. So eat real food, eat clean. If something has got things in the ingredients list on the back of the packet that you can't pronounce, then they're not good for us. So a healthy diet, would be lots of plants, some animal, and drinking plenty of water.
Thank you, Dr. Kerr. That is so great. It's been really great to have you here with us today answering these questions. You can see from the questions that have come in that these are things that people really want and need help with. So it's been fantastic to have you sharing your knowledge and expertise. So thank you very much. One final thing. If people would like to make contact with you, if they've got any follow-up questions or anything like that, would you be happy with me sharing your email address with them?
Yes, I would be, Leo, and I'd just like to say it's been a real pleasure to be here with you today, and I hope the information that I've shared with you will help lots of the people that have sent their questions in and others that come on the Sarcoidosis UK website. So thanks for having me.
No, thank you very much for being here. We really do appreciate it. And like Dr. Kerr said, if you do have any sort of follow-up questions, drop me an email or give us a call, and I can pass on her email to you if you would like to have a chat with her. Okay, so thank you very much for watching our Q&A today. If you do have any other topics you'd like to see us doing these Q&As on, please do get in touch, drop us an email, leave us a comment, give us a call. We would absolutely love to hear from you. Also, if you do need any support with your sarcoidosis or you have any sarcoid related questions, do get in touch as well. Finally, from me, if you are able to, please do consider making a donation to Sarcoidosis UK. We do really need your support in order to continue our important work of raising awareness, providing information and support to sarcoidosis patients, and funding sarcoidosis research as well. Any donation, no matter how big or small, really does make a difference and is really appreciated as well. Okay, that's all from me today. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you again to Dr. Kerr for giving up her time to share her knowledge and expertise with us today. Okay, thank you. Bye.